time for the winning ticket here on DRF Sportsbook. I am Gino Bacola alongside Eric from ETOF21 Sports. We are very excited for another big weekend of football ahead. On this show, we are going to preview 4 of this weekend's biggest college football games. And then Eric and I each have 3 plays for NFL Week 11 that we want to share with you. And then we'll talk a little bit about Sunday Night Football and Monday Night Football, share some thoughts on both of those 2 games as we get set up for NFL Week 11, and we are winding down to the college football season. For some teams, this is their final game. Right? Yeah. It's crazy.
Kind of sway college football playoffs. Elimination for college conference championship games. Yeah, big weekend of college football and NFL. Looking forward to it. Obviously, we've had some key injuries, especially last night. Andrews going down, Burrow going down. Yep. So. Yeah, interesting, and the NFL is completely wide open this season.
So for all of you that are in the state of Iowa, we encourage you right now, sign up for a DRF Sportsbook account. Use our promo code FAST300. That'll get you all the way up to a $300 deposit match bonus. So if you're in Iowa, if you have any friends, family members that you know there, let them know about our sign-up bonus. They can get involved right now. Sign up for DRF Sportsbook, FAST300. So Eric, it was expected this year that the Pac-12 was going to be very, very good. For me, as a fan of USC, unfortunately, that came true, but my team wasn't one of those teams that lived up to the billing. This week, 2 of the big games that we'll talk about are Pac-12 games. And we have some Pac-12 teams in the final year of this conference that really have a legitimate chance, I think, to make some noise and to be competitive against some of the best other teams in the nation. And we'll start in a game where we will preview Arizona and Utah. Eric, if we would have talked a couple months ago, I guarantee this would have not been a game that was on our radar. No. I do not think this is a game that we would have said, come this point of the season, we're going to be talking about an Arizona team that was 1-11 2 years ago.
And this just kind of speaks to the job that, Jedd Fisch has done. People ask me, I'm a big Michigan State guy. People ask me who I want to be the coach. He's number 1 on my list. Quarterback went down. They brought in this new kid who's absolutely electric. But when we look at this game, Utah's coming off an emotional game against Washington. They were in it for the majority of the game. Then there was like some shenanigans the last 4 minutes or so. Some people are calling it a bad beat. Look, whoever lost that bet, you can argue as a bad beat anyway, because Utah was winning most of the game.
I think they scored 28 points in the first half, right? And got shut out in the second half?
Yeah, got shut out. They were driving down to tie it up. There was a pick 6. The guy dropped Deshaun Jackson at the 1-yard line. Then there was a safety. Then there was a missed field goal. Just a pure shenanigans game. And believe it or not, Arizona, if they win this game and Oregon State wins out, they're in the Pac-12 championship game. I think that's the next scenario. So Arizona.
Yes. They're still alive. Dude, this is a good football team. USC got very lucky. Here's Arizona's losses this year. They're 7-3. They lost at Mississippi State by a touchdown, I think, in week 2. And remember, that was still with the other quarterback playing. They lost at USC in double overtime by 2 in a game where their coach made a really bad couple of decisions late as far as like when to go for it, stuff like that. And that was one of Caleb's like incredible, I'm just not going to let us lose moments, where you have like a really good player just making some incredible plays. Since then, they also lost to Washington by a touchdown in a game they should have won. They could have won all of those games, honestly. Since that, they crushed Washington State. They beat Oregon State. They beat UCLA. All 3 were ranked in the top 20 when they beat them. Their running back Coleman's averaging 7+ yards per carry. Their defense is very good against the run. They're 13th in the nation. They only allow like 100 yards per game. That freshman quarterback that we talked about, man, 16 touchdowns. The key, 4 interceptions. Doesn't turn the ball over a whole lot. You feel like these 2 teams, just as far as where they sit at this point of the season, like you talked about, Utah still had a lot to play for last week. They came into the season thinking they were going to get Rising back at some point, thinking they would be playing for a national championship. And then all of a sudden, after last week, now you're in this kind of a spot where you don't have as much to play for. For Arizona, I'm not sure. I mean, obviously, they're still a well-coached team, right?
Yeah. I agree with you 100%. I mean, like, there's always teams like every couple of years, like the Browns in the NFL this year. What if they stayed healthy? And I kind of feel in college football, Utah's under this because, I mean, this team is insanely beat up at some key positions. And you mentioned it, and I really think that people just assume that since it's Arizona and Utah, on name recognition, that Utah's defensive line is going to be able to create some havoc, get in the backfield. But Arizona is actually a well-balanced offense, extremely good at run balancing. I think they're going to be able to run the ball. And Arizona has a balanced offensive attack. So it comes down to me, Utah, who's playing with their backup quarterback, who has numerous skill position players out. Are they going to be able to score enough points to keep up with Arizona? In my mind, I don't think they will. I didn't bet this game, but if I were to bet it, I would lean Arizona. I'm sitting on Utah over 8.5 wins. That was one of my future bets I locked in for this year. So look, I'm just going to sit this one out. Hopefully I can get it here. If not, I'll be looking to hedge so I can guarantee a small profit next week when they have their home finale.
Yeah, it does feel motivation-wise, right? like this Arizona team has to be feeling great about their season right now and where they're headed and the fact that they're still playing for something. And for Utah, like I said, it might just be the opposite way. I lean Arizona in here, and I think, look around for the best that you can get. I would play them on the money line here straight up if you're going to play them this way, because I think if they win, they'll win the game and they'll play pretty well like they've played against a lot of these teams that were playing well at the time Arizona played them. So a big game in the Pac-12 this week, Utah and Arizona. Let's move to our second game, Georgia at Tennessee. Georgia, double-digit point favorite here at Tennessee. They crush Ole Miss last week, so they now jumped up to the number 1 seed. They've already clinched a spot in the conference championship game against Alabama, so that is something to keep in mind. But they are trying to become the first team ever to go 8-0 in regular season conference in 3 straight years in the SEC, which would be unbelievable. They lost one of those conference championship games to Alabama, but this would be, then they won last year. This would be an incredible feat. They have a 27 game winning streak. They're 43-1 in their last 44 games.
Absurd. Just absolutely absurd. 43-1.
They're only allowing 289.2 yards per game, which is 9th in the nation. And I will say, they show you this is like a well-coached team, and it shows you coaching with this team, because I don't think at the beginning of the year, and I don't even think right now, this is like the best, most talented Georgia team that there's been, but they're getting better. You can see them improving, especially like on the offensive side. The quarterback looks more and more comfortable. The defense looks more and more sure of themselves. And the stat that I thought was kind of absurd, they've reached the red zone on 50.89 of their possessions. Half of their possessions, they're in the red zone. That's just crazy to me. Beck has shown a lot of improvement. You've got Bowers back from injury now. He leads the team in catches and in yards. This is a spot, Eric, where I would really want to play Tennessee.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can based on the matchup. I don't know if I can. Like, I'm not laying it with Georgia. I'm not. But I just see Tennessee getting beat up at Missouri last week. They're way better at home, right? Much better at home. They have a 14-game home winning streak. Their last loss at home actually came to Georgia in 2021, 2 years ago. But gosh, their secondary is banged up. They've given up at least 270 yards in each of their last 2 conference games. They only ran for 83 yards rushing last week. Like, if they can't run the ball against Missouri, are they going to be able to run the ball against Georgia here? And they lost a couple of their big weapons at wide receiver. Milton's been really up and down this year. They got torched all over defensively by Missouri. How are they going to stop Georgia? I want to be on the Tennessee side because of all that, right? Because as a gambler, I'm looking at all that, and nobody wants to play Tennessee right now. But I'm just going to stay away. I'm not going to lay it with Georgia. Did you play the dog in here? Could you get the Tennessee?
I just couldn't get it. 2 key factors is Milton. I mean,
me too.
Incredibly low floor, but he has a high ceiling. We don't know what Milton that we are going to get. Could he mess around and make some insane throws that keeps him in the game with position to win it? Yeah. Could he have 5 INTs and two fumbles? Yeah. It's really tough. And another factor is, and we saw it with Auburn. Auburn really exploited the fact the outside zone run really affects against Georgia. Obviously, I was on Ole Miss last week. Ole Miss struggled because they lost both tackles. You can't run outside zone against Georgia when your 2 tackles and you're playing with backups are out there. The issue with Tennessee is all they're running is between the tackles, not outside the tackles. So that's another factor. I just don't think that what you need to do offensively to beat Tennessee, Tennessee does. I don't trust Milton. Bowers is back. This is making life a little bit easier for Beck. I just don't think Tennessee can generate enough stops and be effective enough moving the ball.
I agree.
Heupel is very good with his scripted plays, first 20 to 25 plays. Maybe they can get out to an early lead, like Tennessee scores early, gets a stop. This line drops down less than a touchdown. Then you can look live to get involved with Georgia. But I think this game's close. Georgia pulls away at the end, but I'm not going to be laying the points.
Yeah, and I think what we did right here is a good example of as a gambler, if you're playing quite often, like you can talk a game out and then the play some of the times is no play. You don't always have to play one side or the other, right? We talked it out. We don't like Tennessee enough to play them as the dog, but that doesn't mean the smart bet is laying 10.5 with Georgia. Yeah. Right. Just because Tennessee's not a smart bet, that doesn't mean the opposite side is. That means that stay away, because Georgia still does already have a conference championship game locked up. Tennessee is a lot better at home. You talked about the high variance of Milton. We could see a very good version of Milton where he hits some big plays and he has a big arm, and he could do that there. And this Georgia team, maybe with the look ahead, already knowing they're in the conference championship, like there could be plenty of reasons to see Tennessee cover this game, but we didn't like it enough. We didn't like it enough to lay with Georgia. We don't need to feel forced or pressured to play one side or the other as we move to game 3 of the 4 college games we were going to talk about. Kansas State at Kansas. There have been a lot of times in this rivalry where both of these teams or one or two of these teams were not good. And they both have had a really nice year. It's just a bummer that coming into this game, Kansas continues to have the quarterback issues that they've had, right? Daniels has missed 6 straight games with injury. The backup Bean had to leave last week's game with a head injury. Third stringer, walk-on freshman, came in. He did okay. Almost led a game tying winning drive, but they lost by 3. They only scored 13. With Bean, they were averaging over 35 points per game. Yeah, I have questions about their wide receiver, Grimm, and how healthy he is going to be if he's able to play. So that's why this number is so big right now, because of the quarterback concerns and the quarterback health of Kansas, right? Like this is a spot where I would love to take Kansas too, but if they're down to the third string walk-on freshman or Bean, who had a massive injury and may not be able to run as much and may not be able to look like the type of quarterback he has when they've been scoring 35 a game. Like, do I want to lay a big number with Kansas State here, Eric? No, but they've won 14 straight. And Howard's been playing really well recently. He's had at least 3 touchdowns in 5 games this year. Actually played well against Texas, against a really good opponent. But Kansas State's not really a great road team either. They only have 1 road win this year, and that was against Texas Tech.
Yeah. Obviously, the elephant in the room is you don't know what's going on at the quarterback position. Personally, I don't think Beam's going to play because of that. They're down to this third-string freshman. And with how bad Kansas is on defense, they're not going to be able to score enough points because of who's playing the quarterback position to keep up, even with an inflated number with this. Kansas State has the huge advantage in the trenches if they're able to hold the ball, have these long, sustainable drives, offensive line leaning on Kansas's defensive line. And Kansas is constantly having 3 and out, 6 and out. You know what I mean? Like not able to have these long drives or score points because Beam isn't back there. Kansas State is just going to wear on them, and toward the fourth quarter, this thing could easily get out of hand. And then when I was looking at it, the stat that really stood out to me, Kansas is bottom 5 in stopping teams in the red zone.
If you get there, you score.
Yeah. So I mean, if they're getting 7s, so if Kansas State starts the game, 15 play, 7-minute drive, Kansas goes 3 and out.
Yep. And then your defense is
and then your defense is gas and the flood, and then they have another 5-minute, 5:30 drive for a field goal. And then they have a 6 and out. And then the floodgates will just open up just because
it's hard for me to map out the way that Kansas keeps this game competitive. That's just it for me, honestly. Like whether I'm playing a game or a horse race or anything, I know a lot of people don't have to be this way. I have to see how it happens in my head. There are a few times where we just play a spot, right? Where we're just playing against a team that may have scored a bunch of points the week before, and you're playing a spot. But for the most part, me as a gambler, as a handicapper, I have to be able to see how the matchup would play out for me to play it. And I just can't get there with Kansas in this spot, even with the big number on the opposite side. So again, of the 4 games here, the second and the third game to me were more stayaways. I thought the games that had the tighter spreads might have been a little bit more playable as we finish up with a huge game in the Pac-12, Oregon State and Washington. Oregon State is a slight favorite here at home, and the reason why they're a favorite is because they are at home. They are 16-1 at home since the start of 2021. They've won 9 in a row at home. When Oregon State is not good, it's still a tough place to play. Like if you're way better than them, they keep games close there always. They've always had a really good home field advantage. And for them recently, their quarterback DJU has played pretty well this year. 20 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. For them, what Oregon State wants to do, they want to lean on the run. They're old school. They're all about Martinez. He averages 100 yards a game. He's already run for 1,000 yards this year. He has 4 rushing touchdowns last week in the first half. So they want to just give it to him over and over and over. DJ can make a play or two. He's got some athleticism. And when they keep going with the run, it gives them more opportunities for like one-on-one to kind of pick apart the defense there. But what's fascinating about this game, Eric, why I really think it should be fun is because like Oregon State's real weakness is their secondary. They struggle the last few games. They've given up at least 240 yards through the air in each of them. And with Washington, that's what they are. That's their strength, moving the ball down the field. Penix throwing the ball. They should get another weapon back. I think another like receiving option back this week. And they already have some of the better wide receivers in the nation. Penix leads the nation with 353 yards per game, 28 touchdowns. This team is 21-2 the last 2 years with this quarterback and coach connection, and you called this last year. You thought they were going to be much improved coming over together. They've won 17 in a row. But I will say, if you've watched them week to week, the last 6 weeks, they could have lost any one of those games. Honestly, anyone. They sort of feel like that undefeated team that kind of needs a loss to then sort of get rejuvenated. Like, how before the tournament, and college basketball, you're sort of going in, you almost want to get that loss out of the way. You kind of feel that way, but they're finding ways to win. You talked about all the weird shenanigans in that Utah game. Weird, like USC very easily, 1 or 2 plays. If USC gets 1 or 2 stops, they could have beat them. Arizona.
In that game, it was the end of I think it was the end of the first half. They elected to not kick the field goal.
Yep.
They got the 7. I really think like that sequence right there.
Yep.
That won them the game there.
Yep. And then Arizona, very easily. Arizona was up, like a really weird low scoring game. And then they both kind of scored a couple late in that game. So they felt like a team that's been kind of sitting on a loss for a while. And they got to play in a really tough place here in Oregon State. But this is a fun, like, team that wants to open it up and pass versus a team that wants to slow it down and run.
Yeah. I really think that the big news coming out of this is Jake Levengood, who is the all-conference center for Oregon State, is going to be coming back. And the weakness of the Huskies is defending the run. You're getting an all-conference player back. You have DJU that can run the ball. You have 2 running backs that are very capable of running the ball. You have Washington that's coming off a physical game against Utah. Now they have to play another physical game against Oregon State. I think Washington has a huge disadvantage in the trenches. Yes, I know that Oregon State's defensively is weak against the pass, but sometimes you have to think of football like body shots. So if a defensive line is going into the game already kind of a little beat up because of the game they had before,
Yep.
and then you have this Oregon State team that's going to have these long sustained drives.
Punch.
How is that going to happen at the 50-minute mark of the game, the 55-minute mark of that? And when the guy's like too tired, like it's not because he's not trying, he's just physically too tired to do anything on the defensive line because of all the punches that he's took. I just really think that's a big thing. I think Washington has a huge disadvantage in both of the trenches. You mentioned it, could have lost against Oregon, could have lost against Arizona State if they had a kicker.
Yep.
Utah game got a little funky toward the end, but Utah was in a position to win that game. When Oregon State is a home favorite against the ranked team, 67% ATS. So they're unranked and they're playing a ranked team, and they're 67% against the number in conference play. That is absolutely insane to me.
That's when they were not good.
Yeah.
Right. That's when they weren't even a good team. And now these last couple of years, they're actually a legitimately good team. Like they've had a home advantage always. And I mean, this to me feels like a really nice spot. I will mention that Oregon State's schedule, the way you sort of break it down recently, like they haven't played an offense quite like this. So if Washington is flying around on all like that is the spot that they'll hit. They'll be able to hit their secondary. But I think you were like mapping it out perfectly. It's like a fight, right? If they take one big hit, okay, that's a punch that Oregon State can take. And then they're going to come back and get you those jabs all the way down the field. Even if they only score one touchdown and they take 5 minutes and you take 1 minute, you're still going to wear them down. So I think it's a really good matchup for Oregon State here. I like Oregon State in this spot.
Yeah, I liked him, man. I think I got him at -1.5 or -2. Anything under 3 in my eyes is a buy.
Me too. I'm fine with anything under the field goal there. So those are our 4 college football games to focus on this week. Let's now move on over to the NFL. Erik has 3 NFL plays. I have 3 NFL plays. We'll go back and forth, and then we'll finish up talking some Sunday night football and some Monday night football. Don't forget, if you are in the state of Iowa, you can sign up right now for a DRF Sportsbook account. Scrolling across the bottom of the screen, we have our promo code that you can use for a match deposit bonus all the way up to $300. Fast 300. Erik, we love Vrabel. And we love Vrabel as a dog. When you're getting more than a field goal, and in this case, a touchdown, I think it's not like a blind bet, but you want to look more into the game and see if you can find some advantages and find some reasons why you think this is a play. And as a dog in this spot, I feel like Tennessee, they were in a tough situation in their most recent game. You were on a short week, right, at Pittsburgh where you had the rookie quarterback. I think Levis has actually looked pretty good overall and not made a whole lot of mistakes. Talk to us about why you like the Titans in this spot.
I mean, you mentioned Vrabel, dog, 58.7% against the number. Getting 3 or more, he's 65.7% against the number. AFC South dog, 62.5% against the number. Peterson, home favorite, 44.1% against the number. We look at Lawrence. I brought this up on my show that I do earlier in the week, and on your podcast, comparing Lawrence's stats to Mac Jones. Lawrence isn't this quarterback that everyone thinks he is. Lawrence as a favorite is 41% ATS. As a home favorite, that drops all the way down to 14.3% ATS. One of the trends I'm going to mention, and my next one as well. Home divisional dogs last 5 years, 56% ATS. When they're getting 6.5 or higher, 59.4% ATS. Jags have some issues on the offensive line. This is going to allow Jeffrey Simmons and company to get home and disrupt stuff against Lawrence. One of the best wide receiver to DB matchups this weekend is Calvin Ridley. For every reason, Lawrence doesn't throw to him. So the biggest matchup, I don't think the Jags are going to be able to take advantage of with Ridley, just because they don't throw. He's not the target hound that he should be.
Well, it's like there's not a chemistry there yet, right? Yeah. For some reason, like they're off on their routes or like they can't connect. you see it. They've dropped some he's sort of dropped a few touchdowns, and then there've been some times where they like tried to force it to him and they end up throwing picks. It's just they're not on with each other yet.
Not in sync. ATN, we saw it last year. I think we're starting to see it this year. He's starting to slow down a little bit. Doesn't look as explosive as he did at the beginning of the season. If they can get the running game going, force Lawrence to make some throws, I think that's kind of the Titans' path. Jags run a pass funnel system. What does that mean? They kind of funnel everything to the middle of the field. And if Levis is able to hit some targets, have it be to Hopkins or Westbrook a key, get some confidence going across the middle. I think that's going to make his confidence better throughout the game. That's going to open stuff up for Henry. Henry always performs well against the Jags. I think this is just way too many points. I'm getting a divisional dog. I'm getting one of the better coaches in the league at 7. I'll take the Titans here plus the 7.
Titans plus the 7 for Eric. I'm going to go to a big dog here. There are some big ones this week. I'm not in love with the Panthers overall as a team. I don't think that the Panthers have been playing great, but this is a situation, Eric, where we talk about buying low, selling high, right? You have a Panthers team. They came off of a loss to the Bears, another bad team where Bryce Young got outplayed by Bagent in that game. And Young has not looked fantastic overall, but there'll be moments, there'll be blips here and there. And for Dallas, they're a bully that beats up on teams that are inferior than them, in particular at home. And now they're going to be moving on the road off of a couple games against the Giants, where the last few years they have just demoralized the Giants. They can do whatever they want against the Giants on offense and on defense. I look at this spot for a Cowboys team that's got a short week next week. They've got Thanksgiving to worry about. This is not a spot that they've got circled that they're worried about going out there and winning by 30 points. This is a spot where they could be up by 17 points late in the game and we get a garbage time touchdown to cover this thing. I don't love the Panthers overall as a team, but I do think Dallas is one of the more up and down teams. They almost all of their games right off the bat, Dallas is either winning or losing, and then it never changes. I think there's been one game they played in this year where there's been a lead change, and that was their last game against Philly. Almost every other game. Like, think about it. Dallas got crushed in a situation just like this earlier in the year at Arizona.
Yeah.
When
I totally agree. I got the Panthers too. Just some quick trends to, piggyback your point. Teams that won by 30 or more the previous week, 46%. When they're favored, 45%. When they're road favorites, 39.5% ATS. Since 2005, road favorites laying 10 or more, 41%, 41.5% ATS. Plus, Dak has struggled this year on this road. Splits are way down when you look at his home and road splits. So I like the Panthers here too. I got him in. I'll be honest, you might want to sprinkle a little bit on that.
I will. I'm going to. I think that could be a sneaky spot for them. We've got some big dogs this week. Eric, you're going to go to another one. I think this number's moved a tad.
Yeah, it's dropped down a little bit, 8, 9. Look, anything over 7.5, I like here. Another road divisional dog I talked about, 56% ATS, 7.5 or higher, gets all the way up to 60% ATS. They played in week 7, and the line was Commanders -3, and now it's anywhere from 8 to 10. That's just a little too much movement for me. Giants lost by 30 or more the previous week, and when they are dogs, they're 61% against the spread. Rivera as a favorite, 42.5% ATS as a favorite or 3 or more. When he's a favorite with the Commanders, that drops all the way down to 28.6%. It's important when we look at these trends with these coaches, we look at what they are now. Rivera, a lot of his dog and favorite ATS stuff is when he had Cam Newton with the Panthers. You look at what he does with the Commanders, it's a little bit askewed. Howell really struggles with pressure. Does he have the most passing yards in the league? Yeah. But does he struggle with pressure? Yeah. Martindale's probably coaching for his job. He is known for bringing pressure. I really think he's going to look to bring the pressure because he's going to be coaching for his job. without no Young and no Sweat, you can't run in this Commanders team. 2 weeks ago, the Patriots had 5.63 yards per carry. Last week, the Seahawks had 4.62 yards per carry. I think this is going to be a Saquon Barkley game where they lean on him a little bit. And look, I love fading teams after their defense was on the field for 70 more plays. Commanders were on the field for 74. I'm on the Giants here, anything over 7.5.
Let's move to my next play, Eric. We've got some dogs, some big dogs this week. This will be our fourth of a touchdown or over as our first 4 plays here. I'm going Jets plus the 7. And Eric, a lot of this is more so playing against a Bills team that we've seen repeatedly still be overvalued this year, because they still look good on a lot of the advanced metrics, but they turn the ball over and they've not been like covering or winning football games, like not at all recently. The Jets beat the Bills straight up earlier this year, week 1, when Rodgers got hurt. Recently, the Bills and Josh Allen lead the NFL in interceptions and in turnovers. They just fired their offensive coordinator, Ken Dorsey, which is funny because like I don't think they're going to get like some fired their coach bump. He was actually doing well as an offensive coordinator. Like they were pretty good in most metrics. They just turned the ball over. Like he can't control the turnovers and some of the injuries on defense. So I think it's a good spot for the Jets in here. Man, the thing for them, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. They got to just score a touchdown or two, but they've matched up really well with the Bills the last couple years. And if this thing, soon as it was in the 7 range at around a touchdown, I just have to jump in. I think looking at the weather, it's supposed to be a high of 40 degrees and like possibly down to like 27 that day with like 15 miles an hour wind. So I don't know if it's going to be pouring rain, but it's not going to be warm. It's going to be pretty chilly. And I just don't think they're going to be a ton of points scored in this game. We haven't seen Buffalo operating really well scoring-wise. They've moved the ball. They turn the ball over. They've been sloppy. And now they've got a conference opponent that knows them well, and it's been a nuisance for them the last couple years. So I think the Jets keep this game close. And now, I think both of these teams probably feel like they got a little bit more of a chance now with Burrow going down, right? In the AFC, teams probably feel like there might be another like playoff spot opened up, but I think the Jets keep this game close enough. The 7 was the key number for me to get involved here, Eric.
Yeah, I mean, you don't know what you're going to get from the Bills. You really have no idea offensively what you're going to get, how much time. Because I'll be honest, what Brady wants to run and what the Bills were running are night and day. So how much of the stuff that he wants are they going to be able to implement? How much is McDermott going to have his hands tied, be like, oh no, you know what? Let's run the ball. No.
Yeah.
Don't, you know what I mean? Like, is he really going to step back and say, here's the keys to the offense. Do what you got to do. And when you look at the successful coaches in the NFL, case in point, Andy Reid. Andy Reid doesn't step on Spagnuolo's feet. Andy Reid's an offensive guy. And with the defense, he's just like, dude, do your thing, man. You know what I mean? Like he needs to trust him and let him do his thing for this to be successful. In the first game, is he going to do that? There's going to be a game where he doesn't do it. That would be the game.
Eric, your final play is going to be a player prop here. Talk to us about this one.
Yes. I have a saying, death, taxes, and running back receiving yards over against the Chicago
I like that. I'm going to put that on a shirt. It's catchy.
So here's the thing. Like you look at every single running back that has played the Chicago Bears. There's only been 2 running backs that have not gone over their receiving yard total. Javonte Williams was one. He got hurt in the 4th play of the game. His prop in that game was 12. He had 9 on 2 catches. So he was obviously going to go over his prop. The other was Josh Jacobs, who doesn't factor in the Raiders passing game. But in that game, Zahir White, who's their 3rd down back, went over that game. Bears are allowing 61.5 yards, receiving yards per game to opposing running backs. You add up, you look at their whole body of work, they have allowed over 100 yards more than the team in second place. Their linebacker core defending running backs in the passing game is just god awful. Gibbs is 3rd on the Lions in targets and in receiving yards. Gibbs has gone over this total in 3 straight games. And in those games, he is averaging 7 targets, 6 receptions, and 43 yards in the air. Look, I'm on it. I'm just going to ride this as long as I can because, like last year is the Chiefs. The Chiefs, everyone that played the Chiefs, the running backs were going over. And a lot of the times when you look at these props, people aren't playing running back receiving yards over, and you can get a little advantage with the book. And that's what I'm trying to do here. So Gibbs over 24.5 receiving yards.
Gibbs, let's get you to 25 receiving yards. I'm going to go Rams on the money line here for my final play, Eric. I got the Rammy shirt here that I'm rocking just to show my love and my support. We have a situation where now the Rams are just going to be a lot healthier with Stafford coming off of the bye, with Stafford getting healthy. This team was really, really bad last we saw them. Ripien could not move the ball. They did not drive inside of Green Bay's 30-yard line one time. Not one time. And now they're going to have their complement of weapons back. They're going to have a defense that really tried hard. It was able to create some turnovers. They sacked the quarterback 4 times last we saw them. I'm looking at Seattle, a team that hasn't really been perfect this year, but they're still tied for the lead in the division. Geno Smith has not been as good last year. He had as he was last year. Had a pretty good week last week, but he's kind of been up and down. They've struggled in the red zone, and they're kind of sloppy. Like they've moved the ball a little bit. Last week was a weird game where they had a slow start, then they got into a nice groove. They had 489 total yards and 6.6 yards per play, but they had to kick 5 field goals in the game, right? So they're just not like, there's always something a little off when I watch their games and I feel them, but they seem like they find ways to win. Here's what's scary to me though. They have this game, which you look at on your schedule and you're probably going, okay, we're going to beat the Rams. Because after this game, here's who they play coming up, Eric. They've got on Thanksgiving Day, short week, next week, they play the 49ers. Following that, at Dallas. Following that, at the 49ers. Following that, the Eagles. So your next 4 games, 3 of the 4 best teams in the NFC, along with the Lions. You got the 49ers twice, the Cowboys, and Philly. And 3 of those are on, and a couple of them on the road. So, man, I think this is kind of a really trappy spot for Seattle here with the Rams team that had some fight early in the year. And then because of their injuries, they struggled lately. And I think they're going to get up because they're a well-coached team and they have some veterans. And I think the Rams are going to win this game. I played them on the money line here.
Yeah, I mean, it's the perfect spot. I mean, it's the absolute perfect spot to play them here. So I like this play a lot. I'm going to probably be on the Rams as well, just a good spot to fade Seattle. I'm not really that high on the Seattle team. I think Donald's going to be able to eat against their tackles. And I don't know who's going to be able to guard Puka and Kupp. You can definitely pass on this team. So I like the Rams here a lot in the spot.
Eric, let's get to Sunday and Monday night football. Sunday night football, we've got the Broncos versus the Vikings. 2 teams that had bad starts to the year, but have both been playing a lot better lately. The Broncos more quietly have been playing better lately. For the Vikings, we've all heard about the Pastronaut, Josh Dobbs. He's been excellent, and they've become a team that a lot of people are rooting for now. And last year, they were a team that a lot of people were kind of rooting against because they kept getting lucky. The balls kept bouncing in their favor over and over, and a lot of the analytical or the people that watch film back were getting frustrated because it's like, this can't keep happening. This can't keep happening. And then we finally saw it flip the other way for them in the playoffs and early this year. But the Broncos defense, Eric, I think has been really improving more and more the last, as the season has gone on. Their advanced metrics are still going to be bad because like that 70-point game, you're not ever going to be able to get rid of that. But when you start diving into what they've done more recently, I think they've improved on that side of the ball. And all year long, their offense has been fine. Like they've been much better with Peyton than they were last year and in prior years. For the Vikings, do we know the status of Jefferson?
Listed as questionable today.
Okay, so
Madison listed as questionable as well. I look at it like this. This is how I look at it. Buying low, selling high. What is everyone talking about right now? the Vikings. It's the
Yep.
feel-good story. Everyone loves the Vikings. Dobbs is 2-9 straight up as a starter.
And they've won the last, and the one of them was the last one, because two back, he wasn't even a starter. He didn't start that game, so that one's not on there. But he has, for as fun and as feisty as he's been, he hasn't won a lot of games. And now we're in a situation where in this spot, if you're playing against him, I mean, if you're playing the Vikings, you're basically playing them to win, because you're not really needing them to like cover with margin, right? It's got to be a close game, basically, is what they're telling you here.
You're gonna play the Vikings here. I just played the money line.
Yeah.
Broncos, I look at it like this. Obviously, my worry points are this. Hawkinson, Dobbs has a history of targeting the tight end. You look at tight ends against the Van Joseph's defense. They've always kind of produced. A little worried about that. Broncos have looked better, and why have they looked better? They're finally leaning on Javonte Williams. He's been an absolute beast running the ball. 20 touches against the Chiefs, 18 touches against the Bills. And he finally looks like the leg injury is better. He looked a little bit slow. He's starting to look a little bit faster. Doesn't have that burst of speed, but has the strength in the legs to physically run over people. And you mentioned that 70-point game. After that, they're only allowing 21 points per game. So their defense has been playing better. You look at the last 3 games, that dips all the way down to 16 points. Wilson looking a lot better. He's running the ball a little bit more, not turning the ball over. Props to Payne for making him look good. And the Vikings are just banged up. I think right now this is like what the ceiling for the Vikings, if you will. I think they're going to be able to run on him. I think Sutton's going to have a good day matched up against the DBs. And I think the defense for the Broncos is going to be able to generate enough stops. I'm still trucking along in Circa, and I'm saving the Cowboys because you have to play the Thanksgiving Day games for Circa. I'm actually thinking I'm taking the Broncos this week in Circa. I actually did take the Broncos this week in Circa.
You got the Vikings, who haven't had their bye yet this year either, right? Versus the Broncos, who are just coming off a bye a few weeks ago. And they've won 3 games in a row, like kind of quietly. They beat Green Bay, then they beat Kansas City, and then they had their bye, and then they won at Buffalo. So their last 2 games, they beat KC and Buffalo, 2 good offenses, and they held those teams to 9 and 22 points.
Mm-hmm.
So they just look like they're improving. I think sometimes we can't get out of our head how bad they looked, or some of the embarrassing losses early in the year and even last year, and everyone just kind of gave up on Russell Wilson, but they've been better than that. They honestly have. And I'm with you too. I'm on the Broncos side at under 3. I would be okay with the number at under 3. And Eric,
I got it at, I think 1.5 or 2. I bet 1.5 or 2, and I did them in the circuit.
And the survivor play there. Let's move on to Monday Night Football. A very good Monday Night Football game, as we have a rematch from the big game last year, Eric. And your Chiefs are the 2.5-point favorite in this game. Both of these teams, right? So they should be fresh. Andy Reid's been awesome off the bye. For the Chiefs this year, the defense has been carrying them. This is not their old typical Chiefs. 5 out of their 9 games, they've scored 21 points or less. Their defense is 4th in yards allowed per game, 2nd in passing yards allowed per game, 2nd in points per game allowed. They held Miami to only 292 total yards in the game and only 62 yards receiving for Hill. The offense, though, they threw for 185 yards and 2 touchdowns, but in the second half of their last game, they got beat up a little bit. They only had 46 yards in the second half. They're still winning games, though. They find ways late with their veteran team, and they were able to get up early on their opening drive. They spread the ball around quite a bit. There was one key play in that game where the Dolphins were driving. They were down by 14, and they could have cut it to a 1-score game. And all of a sudden there was a turnover that flipped, and instead of being 14-7, it was 21-0. So it did sort of really change the complexion of that game. Rice has been good for them. It still feels like when you're watching them, though, like in big moments, that it's Kelsey and is somebody else going to get open and make a play? And like, does Mahomes need to make a play? But Rice has been better, especially when you dive into some of the numbers. On the Eagles side, Eric, their pass defense has actually been a weakness for them. But is Kansas City your normal Kansas City team to exploit it the way they could have in prior years, where they were maybe a little more prolific passing the ball? I'm not sure. And this is another team that you watch them some games, it's different ways. They're 23-20. They're 23-3 in their last 26 games, including the playoffs. Like,
it's pretty remarkable. Mahomes 3-point favorite or less, 72.7% ATS. I kind of want to get the Eagles here at anything over 3.
Me too.
Kind of be waiting here. I know Eagles struggle defending the middle of the field, but look, am I happy Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift are dating and look like they're having a good time? Yeah. In reality, I don't care. I care about making money. And part of my thing is Kelce at that point right now, and we've seen it happen to certain athletes, is he more of a celebrity than an athlete? You know what I mean? Like
you get a lot of stuff going on. You get distractions, and on top of that, the guy's he's got a lot of mileage now too, right? He's not young either. He's
hosting Saturday Night Live, launching his own
in the off because they went to Germany and then he went to, was it Argentina?
Argentina for
right in the bye week.
I really don't care.
I mean, anyone can go do that. No, it's not that we're judging him. You just are wondering, is it gonna wear on him?
Is it gonna affect him
his play on the field for a team that's always going to be a highly valued team, right? That's the question.
And Reed is phenomenal off the bye. Important to remember that Chiefs are 20th DVOA against the run. Not that good. I think the Eagles are going to be able to run the ball on them. Eagles pass rush, is that going to be able to get to Mahomes? I know they brought in Taylor from the Jags. He had all those false starts that weren't called in the first week. Then he was benched. You can't get home on him, make Mahomes a little bit unhealthy. So I look in this game, I'm going to take the Eagles as soon as it gets to 3. You mentioned Rice. Eagles are one of the worst teams in the league defending the slot.
And that's
Rice is second on the team in targets, first on the team in red zone targets. I'm going to be betting his over yardage total more than likely. Probably even him to score a touchdown, and then I'll look at the Eagles here plus the 3 if I can get to 3.
Monday Night Football, Chiefs, Eagles, one of the games of the year when they set the schedule up, and these two teams have both been very good so far throughout the year. Erik, buddy, I wish you the best of luck this weekend. Big thanks to all of you for tuning in. We'll be back, I believe, next week. It's holiday week, but I think we'll talk about it, and if we're available, we'll be back on Friday at 6 o'clock p.m. Eastern time. Hope all of you have a very, very happy Thanksgiving coming up. Don't forget about those Thanksgiving football games. If you ever need a little bit of additional help, Erik and I both do a lot of other content. Erik, talk to everybody about your schedule normally, right? You'll have a Tuesday night show. Then you'll also have a podcast that comes out later in the week. You and I do a show together. Where can we find all of that or find out more about your schedule and all the great stuff that you do?
You can follow me on etop21 on Twitter. Everything is on there. I have my live show that comes out every single Tuesday. We kind of look back at the week of the NFL, share some early looks in terms of that. Look, if you got on that this week, you're sitting on the Steelers +4. You're in a great position. You got that in before the Watson news broke. You come on, you give a horse racing bet of the day. And then Friday, right after this, my podcast comes out. A couple more NFL bets, reaction to the Thursday night football game. We build you a DFS lineup. We share who to target in DFS. Last week you had Mike Evans, Jared Goff. So you came out pretty good.
Yeah, right off the bat, you're in great shape.
So, make sure to, and we have CFL. Jim and I preview the CFL, the Grey Cup 110th championship game. So
if you're a sports fan, make sure you're subscribed to Erik's channel and you're following him on the socials because there's all sorts of great content out there previewing different stuff. Coming up for me, we will also have our Sunday morning show, 11 o'clock a.m. Eastern time. We will go over all of the games for Sunday and for Monday, even games that we don't have a play on. We'll preview all of them. We'll give you the news, injury stuff, maybe some players to target in DFS or in fantasy situations. We'll talk about a website parlay play that we both get involved with, and we play some props and we parlay on. So come and hang out with us on Sunday morning at 11 o'clock a.m. Eastern time. You can follow me on Twitter. It's me, Gino B. But make sure you're following us here at DRF Sportsbook, and we'll be back again very soon on The Winning Ticket.